Magic 8-Ball by Gazpacho. You know, sometimes I don't have an intro. I just want to get into it. I couldn't think of anything good, so yeah, we're diving right into it. Gazpacho is a progressive rock band from Norway, getting their start way back in like the early 2000s. Their first album of Bravo was pretty good, you know. For me, I feel like they really hit their stride in the 1-2 punch of Night and TikTok. I think most people got on board with them for Night, and then were blown away for TikTok. And Night was their fourth album after When the Earth Lets Go and Firebird. I guess the thing that I love about Gazpacho is their blending of this very thick atmosphere, this very moody and vibey styles where the keyboards and the guitars are really doing double work. You know, each are able to kind of take center stage, but also, you know, take a step back. And combined with that is their ability to structure an album very, very well. You know, even though Night was a fairly lengthy album, with the opening track being over 17 minutes long, it never felt overblown. It never felt like it was staying too long. Like, each of the passages always had a build-up and a payoff. You know, there was a very clear direction of where all these songs were going to go. Then from, you know, TikTok, we got Massa, Atropos, March of Ghosts, and Demons. And all three of these albums, in my mind, are just as good with variations of success on there. And again, it really goes to show the things that I love about Gazpacho. That dripping soundscapes that these guys are really able to command. The ability to blend these sounds and themes that are kind of present throughout an album and around a track, as well as the actual like concept of all these records, because all these records basically are fairly ambitious concept records. I do feel, though, after Demon, we kind of got into a little bit of a I'm trying to think of like the right word, like wandering of the landscape a little bit. Moloch, Soyuz, both of these are kind of on their weaker side. And even Fireworker, which I really did love, had its moments of floundering, had its moments of wandering the wilderness without really too much perch on it. And I would say that Fireworker is easily the best out of those three. But I just, again, as much as I loved Fireworker, I was just kind of waiting for a little bit more perch and a little bit more oomph. So now we come into Magic 8-Ball. You know, it's been 5 years since Fireworker, one of the longer stretches of time between Gazpacho releases. And there's a few things that I really do love about this record, and there's a few things that I find quite challenging about this record. First off, the thing that I do love is the amount of music and the length of this album. This album's only about 46 and a half minutes, which I think for Gazpacho is the sweet spot. You know, this is really where they drill down and provide us with the most amount of music that I can digest quite regularly. You know, and the Gazpacho kind of paint by numbers is still kind of here, if I'm being honest. You know, we've got a little bit of the build-ups, a little bit of the payoffs. We've got that dripping atmosphere and the vocal works provided by Jan Hendrik Omi, or is it John and Henrik? His vocals has basically been a staple of the band since the beginning, like basically since, 96? And it's his signature singing style that I feel really ties a lot of this together very, very nicely. And even though we are quite a length in, like this is their 12th studio record, his voice still sounds crisp and clear without any wavering, without any kind of hints of aging. And I feel like even though he's playing in a very safe sandbox in that case, it never gets droning, it never gets boring, and it never gets kind of too much or too little in that case. Similarly, the rest of the band is fairly similar to what we've had before. It's all returning individuals. We have Jan Arne Valbo on guitars programming, Thomas Anderson on keyboards programming as well as a producer, Michael Krummer on violins, additional guitars programming. He's been with the band since 2001. Christian Trop on bass guitar since 2005. And then the new boy a little bit, Robert R. Johnson or Johannesson on drums and percussions. Now, one of the things that I think kind of downplays this a little bit is I was really hoping for a little bit more of Michael Kromer's violin work as well as his programming. His was one of the things that really brought me into the fold within Gazpacho. It was one of the things that I loved on Night. It was one of the things that I loved on Demon and March of Ghosts, and I didn't quite feel his presence as much on this piece here. And I think that kind of lends it very much to the things that I feel are a little bit of a drawback, which is the lack of a consistent structure on this record. Even though the album starts off with a really beautiful 9 minutes and 11 seconds Starling, it has a great build-up, it has a great flow to it, it is a commanding of how to structure a singular track on here, but after that it does feel like it wanders the landscape a little bit in terms of the structure. And this was the big falling out that I had with Moloch and with Soyuz, was I didn't have that perch. I didn't have those sections of music where I could really sink my teeth into. You know, like, they're challenging the listener for sure, and it is very complex and it is very kind of all over the place. But the drawback to that is after I've sat down and listened to this album for a multiple amount of listens, nothing's sticking. You know, nothing is really clear. There's maybe one or two other tracks or moments on here, one being Sky King, the other being Gingerbread Man, that really kind of hooks their claws into me in the same way that pretty much all the albums from even Firebird to about Demon did. And this is one of the frustrating moments that I have with the band, because I know the music that I'm listening to is very good, very dense, very atmospheric, very vibey, but there's nothing really begging me to come back for another dip in the pool, so to speak. That is one of the biggest drawbacks that I've had within the last 3 to 4 Gazpacho records, basically from Moloch onward. Now, I did mention Gingerbread Man. I want to talk about Gingerbread Man specifically for a little bit, because this is one of the things that I do love about Gazpacho, and I want to give it its flowers, because their ability to, once again, command an atmosphere is second to none. The only other band that has this kind of commandment would maybe be Anathema or Atma, however you want to pronounce it. You know, their ability to really build up the atmosphere and really build up a soundscape within the actual album itself. And I feel like Gingerbread Man is kind of the star performer on this album, where it has that very crystal clear build up, this very, you know, grand statement within the music that I feel like the rest of the album kind of wants to do, but never really solidifies in. And then finally, it's the last handful of tracks, Immerwar and Unrisen. I feel like both of these are kind of whimpers to the rest of the album's more explosive side of things, you know? And at the end of Unrisen, I just kind of feel like there's a lot more gas in the tank that was unutilized, you know? Like, I was waiting for something bigger to happen that never really came to the forefront, and I was kind of hoping for more. And by the time Unrisen ends, I was kind of waiting for more. Like, I was like, oh, this is the end? This is how they decided to end the album off on? Okay, sure. And I mean, that was the biggest downfall that I had with Fireworker, was that the ending of the album was very lackluster and kind of anticlimactic. And I can say the same thing here for Magic 8-Ball. It was just kind of anticlimactic, and I was waiting for that big release that never kind of happened. So yeah, in the end, Magic 8-Ball was still a fairly good time, all things considered. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is the best. In fact, it's far from the best Gazpacho record. But I would also not necessarily put it on the same level that Moloch or Soyuz, or even their first 2 records of Bravo or When the Earth Lets Go. Like, they've definitely grown beyond that, and I do feel as if this band is really challenging themselves to create music that's outside of the norm. And I will always applaud a band for doing that, but I also feel like at this point they've challenged themselves within this box enough that they kind of have earned themselves to go elsewhere. You know, try something else. You know, they've really drilled down into this sound, and I really want them to explore maybe the landscape a little bit outside of this comfort zone that they found themselves in. I do feel as if the staple sound for the sound that they're commanding on this was actually found on Fireworker. This one just kind of feels like a little bit of really good left off material that they've polished off from the Fireworker sessions that have now become its own thing. So Yeah, that's kind of my overall feel for Magic 8 Ball. I think in the end, my overall rating for this album will be Magic 8 Ball by Gazpacho is an album that I would ultimately download. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is even a bad record. I would say it's a very good record. The things that are holding it down for me from being a great record is the lack of consistency within the track lengths, the lack of a very crystal clear foundation within the structure of this album, and kind of that big crescendo at the end, or at least some kind of a, I don't know, tying of a bow within the final couple of tracks. Other than that, I feel like this album was a really great effort from a band that's already proven themselves to be masters of the craft. And they're just kind of proving themselves again that they have enough gas in the tank to see themselves into another album cycle. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Will they kind of continue in this line of things? Because I would be very shocked to see another Night, TikTok, Demon, or March of Ghosts kind of still in their tank at this point. But who knows? Who knows? They might be able to surprise me. But that's my thoughts. That's what I've got right now for Magic 8 Ball from Gazpacho. What did you guys think about this record? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And that's all I've got for you guys today. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.